So we saw that at the end of the First World War, peace was achieved between the Central Powers and the Allied nations, particularly between the Allied nations and Germany, through the Treaty of Versailles. Now, through this treaty, we saw how Germany had to apparently face many unjust and to some extent inhumane terms. So, we cannot simply believe the word of the German public. For that, as students of history, we have to look at the terms ourselves and make a fair analysis. So that is why now we start looking at the various terms of the Treaty of Versailles. The terms of the Treaty of Versailles signed in the year 1919 can be broadly subdivided into three divisions. First off, we have the territorial terms. Then we have the military terms, and finally the economic and the financial terms. Now we start to look at the territorial terms of the treaty first. So do you remember the region of Alsace-Lorraine? Now this region was handed over to Germany when France had lost in the Franco-Prussian War. This was a personal defeat for the French. And that is why when Germany lost the First World War, France made sure that Germany gives them this particular region back. So we see this particular element of personal revenge again being shown in this case. So Germany had to give back the French territories as these regions were initially French before the Franco-Prussian War, especially that of Alsace and Lorraine, which it had occupied during the Franco-Prussian War. And in this map we can see the region of Alsace-Lorraine, which till now was a part of Germany, but then now it's again been given back to France after the First World War and the signing of the Treaty of Versailles. Now can you answer this question? Which region was Germany forced to hand back to France? Was it the Trieste-Trentino region? Was it the Polish corridor? Was it Rhineland? Was it the region of Alsace and Lorraine? The correct answer is the region of Alsace and Lorraine. So France was not merely happy by getting the region of Alsace-Lorraine. It wanted more from Germany, and that is why it made sure that through this treaty, Germany will have to give away the coal-rich or the resource-rich area of the Saar Basin, which is right over here, the black spot, to France, not permanently, but for a period of 15 years. So for this period of time, Germany would lose all rights over this particular resource-rich basin known as the Saar. Germany also had to give up large and strategic territories of its own, such as the Polish corridor. And the Polish corridor was this region marked in blue. This initially was a part of Germany, but after the First World War and the Treaty of Versailles, Poland as a country got its independence. And this particular territory, the Polish corridor, was thus handed over to Poland. This was so that Poland gets access to the Baltic Sea. But in turn, this led to Germany losing its access to the Baltic Sea as it had previously, but also it led to Germany losing contact with two regions of its own. So East Prussia and the remaining of Germany lost all land connection due to this particular Polish corridor, which was handed over to Poland. Germany also had to hand over the Sudetenland region, which it had occupied for a significant amount of time, to the nation of Czechoslovakia. So what we actually see is that through this treaty, not only were terms imposed upon Germany, many new nations achieve independence, namely that of Belgium, Poland, Czechoslovakia, and Yugoslavia. Now notice how these particular nations are very close to Germany itself. This is because most of these nations were built out of territories and lands that previously belonged to Germany. But Germany, if you remember, also had colonial interests. What happened to them, if you may ask? Well, according to this treaty, Germany had to let go of not some but all of its colonies. So, Germany primarily had colonies in the continent of Africa, and it had some colonies in Asia as well. So it had to hand all of its colonies to the Allied powers. Now, Togoland and Cameroon, these two particular African territories, they went on to Britain and France, while the German Southwest Africa was taken up by Britain solely. And German East Africa was split between Belgium and Britain. Now, on the other side of things, North Pacific Islands was then handed over to Japan. Now, these nations, the allied nations, did not colonize these lands. These nations had to hold on to these territories as mandates of the League of Nations, or they were put in charge. Now, Germany also had to lose all the territories it had occupied in the First World War itself. Till now, we saw all its existing or all the territories it had occupied before the First World War. But Germany made significant territorial advancements during the war as well. So now these lands also had to be handed over, and these mostly involved lands in Estonia and Latvia, which is right over here and here. So during the First World War, Germany was able to capture lands all the way till Estonia and Latvia, but these, according to this treaty, were also to be handed over. As if all this was not enough, Germany also lost some strategic cities which it had control over. Namely, it lost Eupen and Malmedy, which it had to hand over to the newly independent nation of Belgium. Whereas it also had to hand over Memel and the adjacent land of Memelland to Lithuania. So we see that Germany is also losing its control over these strategic cities, which used to give Germany access to important trade routes, important water bodies, and was in general a key strategic element of Germany's prosperity. And finally, talking about key strategic cities and territories, the city of Danzig, which was predominantly German populated, now became a key port city under the protection of the League of Nations. So Danzig, which is right over here, at first belonged to Germany. But when the Polish corridor, as I just mentioned, was handed over to Poland, Germany lost its control over Danzig. But since Danzig was a German majority city, it was made a free city, which means that no power had ultimate control over this particular port. But by this activity, Germany lost one of its most important cities on the Baltic Sea coast, which led to a lot of loss of trade, and also it lost an enormous amount of its own population as well. Germany was also forbidden to unite with its previous allies, namely Austria. So Germany could not unite with Austria and create a bigger German Reich. That simply was forbidden. So not only is land being taken away from Germany, any future prospect of Germany expanding is also being taken away. So in total, if you think about it, all the lands and all the territories that I mentioned that Germany had to give away, that makes up for 13% of its European territory alone. This does not include its colonial losses. Its stronghold, its territorial capacity in Europe itself decreased by 13%. As you see over here, we have all the particular important territorial handovers and rearrangements which we can see over here, namely Eupen Malmedy being given to Belgium, Alsace-Lorraine being given to France, then you also have the Schleswig region given to Denmark, you have Memel given to Lithuania, this is Danzig city which became a free port, you also have this entire Polish corridor which was given to Poland, you also have the Sudetenland region which was given to Czechoslovakia, which is also called the Hlusten region. So this alone made up for 13% of losses in Germany's European territory. But more importantly, Germany lost 1/10 of its population. Not in war, it lost it in this particular rearrangement, because people who were earlier living in Germany, mostly who were speaking the German language and were of German ethnicity, now had to live in new nations which no longer was something they could call their own. More than the loss of land, Germany felt humiliated that it had to part away with its own people. So everyone was seeming to win something from the war, but all Germany was getting were losses. But perhaps it's acceptable given the fact that Germany had lost the war. Territorial arrangements are a part of every peace treaty. But it's not perhaps the territorial rearrangements, but the other terms which you will see in the subsequent video,
which would make it clear as to why the Germans considered the treaty as a diktat or an imposition.
So quickly recapping the territorial terms of the Treaty of Versailles, we see that the region of Alsace-Lorraine was handed over to France, whereas Austria could no longer unite with Germany. Germany also had to give the Polish corridor over to Poland. Now, it also had to give the resource-rich Saar region, which is right over here, to France for a period of 15 years. Now, this region was rich in resources and coal, and Germany no longer had its access to this particular resource for a 15 year period. It also had to lose all its colonies, mostly in Africa. So Germany lost a lot of territories, namely 13% of its entire European territory in this particular war after the Treaty of Versailles was signed. So that makes up for all the territorial terms of the Treaty of Versailles. Definitely that is not the end of all the terms. As we already have mentioned, the terms can be divided into three parts. We have the territorial, which are the ones we just discussed, after which we'll move on to the military, the financial, and also a couple of other terms which make the Treaty of Versailles a truly unique case study. So in the next video, we will be looking at the various other terms of the Treaty of Versailles.
Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon. You can also register for free at deltastep.com or download the DeltaStep app to learn one-to-one with our amazing teachers, or to get access to all our 5,000 plus amazing videos as per your school syllabus. Master each topic with our adaptive practice technology. Get million plus questions with step-by-step solutions and unlimited mock tests. Get all your doubts resolved instantly. Learn via games and win amazing prizes like PlayStations and iPads. So at DeltaStep, learning is not just fun and easy, it is rewarding too. So register for free now.